Uncut. Good evening, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to another episode of COASTER-net Uncut. I am, of course, Eire VR. I haven't done this in a very, 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 very long time. That is
no, we have not.
Danny Miller right there, and we are back for the off.
Yes, remember me, remember him.
Yeah. Well, they remember us from other fine shows like COASTER-net Update and all the great stuff that we do here at COASTER-net, but we haven't sat down to do an uncut, the bread and butter, for so long that I've forgotten how to do it.
The original,
not to be matched uncut. So Danny,
it's uncut.
It's uncut.
We haven't brought that back in a long time.
And people are like, "What are these two doing?" Like, we've never seen that. So tonight, Danny, we are going to do one of our favorite episodes of the year, and that is we are going to rank all of the new roller coasters and rides to some extent for this past year. So 2018, you may recall from the most anticipated show, we had a lot of high hopes for 2018, and a lot of them paid off.
Yeah.
And we're going to talk about all these fine rides here tonight. So, Danny, we're going to start with you because you had quite a few rides, a lot of flat rides, experiences that I did not ride this year. So we're going to start off with those for you, and you're going to talk a little bit about that.
Yeah, so basically what we did, you and I, there were 6 major rides. Well, there were 8 major rides. Where you and I rode 5 of them, 5 of those in common, or there were 7 major rides, whatever it was, and 7 major rides that we had ridden between the two of us, and 5 of those we had both ridden, and then you rode Twisted Cyclone, I did not, and I rode Wonder Woman, and you did not. And then in addition to that, I rode 5 of the smaller rides that debuted in 2018, none of which you got to ride. So I'm briefly just going to go through those 5 quickly. And those are in alphabetical order: Battle for Eire at Busch Gardens Williamsburg, Breaker's Edge Water Coaster at Hershey Park, Cyborg Cyber Spin at Six Flags Great Adventure, that weird-looking flat ride, Merlin's Mayhem at Dutch Wonderland, which was supposed to debut in 2017, and I rode that on opening day back in, April. That feels like it was forever ago that I rode that thing. And then Oscar's Wacky Taxi at Sesame Place. So of those 5 rides, here's how I ended up ranking them. Breaker's Edge at Hershey Park, then Oscar's Wacky Taxi, then Battle for Eire, after that Merlin's Mayhem, and Cyborg Cyberspin last of all of those.
Really? Because that was one that we thought was going to be real cool, and it seems that the general consensus both out of Texas and New Jersey is that it kind of fell flat.
Disappointing, I think is a good word for it. And we had heard that, but we didn't ride it until Riding of the Bull, which was the weekend after Labor Day. And we had heard a lot of reviews. It's not really disorienting. You don't really feel a whole lot of forces, and that's true. The weird thing is, it looks really cool, and it looks like it does a lot of cool stuff, and it does. The interesting thing with the 3 or 4 different axes of rotation, you only ever actually go upside down twice, because you're just constantly spinning in place. And unless you're on the end of that row of seats, you don't even really feel that much motion almost at all. And it's really just more like you're rocking back and forth and tilting than you're actually flipping.
That's kind of how I felt with Demon up at La Ronde, where it's a top spin that does crazy.
The one arm has the kink in it, so it can actually tilt.
Yeah. Yeah, that's exactly how I felt. I thought it was a lot better. It was just a whole lot of nothing.
Yeah, it was very, very similar to that. And we actually watched the cycle before us, and I was actually watching it, and I said to the people I was with, I was like, look, that and the ride cycle is very short. It's only maybe about a minute to 70 seconds or so. And I was like, they went upside down twice in the first 20 seconds. And then that whole last 45 seconds of the ride, they didn't go upside down once. I was like, look, they're just kind of tilting back and forth. So the light package is real cool. The ride itself is really neat to watch because it's really different and weird looking. But in terms of the ride itself, definitely not the thrill ride. It was more relaxing than anything. Certainly not the intense thrill ride that you might expect. So after that was Merlin's Mayhem at Dutch Wonderland, the S&S family suspended coaster. And the nice thing about this one, onboard audio. So that was kind of neat. The whole story here is Merlin is the wizard, and Mayhem is the dragon that he has found and trained. And what happened is Mayhem has flown away, and you're going to find Merlin's Mayhem. So it's Mayhem is actually the name of the dragon. So you're flying around, and the whole story is you're helping Merlin find Mayhem, and you're flying around looking for Mayhem. And then at the end, there's a nice big like screen in the station. When you come back into the station, Mayhem actually comes back, and there's a couple different endings where he does something silly to Merlin, and then he flies away again. So I guess that entices you to maybe ride again. So I really enjoyed it. It's a really good fit for that park, because Dutch Wonderland is more of a kids park. I think it's the right type of ride to go into a park like that. So I enjoyed it. Nothing to seek out in particular on a special trip or anything, but I think it's a good attraction for that park in particular. Next, I went with Battle for Eire, the VR overlay of Europe in the Air at Busch Gardens Williamsburg. This is exactly what we had heard. You go into there's a pre-show type of thing. There's actually a couple pre-shows where you have like the harness, like the helmet on your head. It's basically if you took the inside of a construction hard hat and took that out, that's what you're putting on. And then the goggles are in the seat next to you on a little like hook. And they direct you, once all the seatbelts are tightened and everything, you take and they're wired in, so they're not going to die or anything. And you take the glasses off, and there's magnets, and they snap into place on your headset. And then you go through the VR ride. It's a motion simulator. I was hoping for maybe a little bit more intense motion, a little bit more motion in some parts. I was hoping that maybe it would shake and move around just a little bit more intensely. But I also understand it's, the VR can cause, sort of motion displacement sickness at the same time. But I enjoyed it. The storyline is actually really nice. It has to do with chasing down the heart of Eire, which is what gives all the creatures in the land their magical powers and whatnot. And it's being stolen by like these demon type guys who want to steal the heart of Eire. And it's really neat. So I enjoyed the storyline. I enjoyed the VR. I think the VR was done very well. And I think that maybe this is maybe a better application for a VR ride. Because better throughput for sure, because you've got the pre-show, you've already got the headsets on, so you just pick up the glasses, snap, and then you pull them off at the end, and there they go. It was a very seamless process. It was a very quick process and efficient process. So good news there. Oscar's Wacky Taxi #2, very similar in style, length, and intensity to a Wooden Warrior or a Rorosaurus. Not quite as long as a Rorosaurus, maybe not quite as much airtime. I would still say Rorosaurus maybe a bit better in my book, but I think it's right there in that same category of those rides. If you like the short, abrupt, intense airtime on these little wood coasters, then you'll like this ride as well. The funniest thing about this, so the Zero car looks really nice. Oscar poking his head out of the dirty taxi, so that's kind of cool. The funniest thing is when you come back into the station, Oscar says, "Ah, yuck! What a wacky ride!" But the Y in the word yuck is not very well pronounced at all, so it sounds like, "Ah, frack! What a wacky ride!" Like it's and we wrote it early on, so I don't know if they fixed that or not, but it's it's kind of questionable what you think. So that was kind of fun. We rode that ride quite a few times. I think like 4 or 5 times. and really enjoy it. Sesame Place is a really pretty little park. Really falls in line with the other Busch Gardens and SeaWorld parks in terms of the landscaping. You walk in, you've got a big there's a big garden right there where they have Elmo carved out of a rose bush. They have Big Bird carved out of a different type of bush, and they have a Snuffy carved out. So really nice flowers and plants and bushes all throughout that park. It's actually mostly water rides. They only have a handful of dry rides, but they do have 2 coasters, Oscar's Wacky Taxi and then the Vapor Trail coaster, which is similar in size to like the Hippogriff coaster.
Okay.
Maybe a little bit bigger even than the Hippogriff coaster. So, Oscar's Wacky Taxi, 2 thumbs up from me. And then Breaker's Edge, the water coaster that got put into Hershey Park. And, this one was a lot of fun. It's not quite as long as Wildebeest. So we knew that going in, and it's got the circular turnarounds. I happened to ride this with my girlfriend Danielle. We went to Hershey Park for the day, and we actually rode it twice. It was funny because the queue was full because we waited until like the heat of the day to go do it, and we figured we were going to wait a while. And they were like, "Oh, it's probably about an hour to an hour and a half wait." And I said, "Well, we want to try this. This looks cool. It's really hot." So we figure if we're hot, we get to cool off by getting wet. And what happened is the ride broke down when we were about a half an hour in. So we decided, we said, well, let's hang on and see what happened. And people kept getting out of line. And to the point where we were like, there was only like 15 people left in line, and we were still moving up in line as if the ride was running. Well, what they did, they finally came by and they gave us exit passes. They said, you guys can come back and ride this later when it reopens by going up the fast track entrance, right? So what we did, we kind of hung around, and then shortly after they told us we could get out of line, the ride reopened. So what did we do? We jumped in the regular line. We went up and rode it in about 5 minutes, had a great time. And I said to her, well, do you want to go ride that again, or do you want to do something else with the exit pass? And she was like, well, that was really fun. I would do that again. It's like, and I said, this is probably the best water ride here. So we went up and rode it a second time right away. And, lots of good, like sprayers as you go into the turnarounds and the tunnels. Some really good air on a lot of the drops. It's got a couple of the hills that are really good as well. Very, very reminiscent of Wildebeest, just a little bit shorter than Wildebeest, but every bit as fun as a ride like Wildebeest. So, that was my favorite of those 5 smaller rides. That was my favorite one that I did, for sure.
Well, and a lot of people have a lot of nice things to say about those water coasters all over the place. And I'm still...
Well, and I always said I would go to water parks more if more of them had that. The only time I had ever stepped foot in Hershey's water park since it really opened, aside from to just get to Lightning Racer quicker, was when they announced they were closing Roller Soaker. I went and ride Roller Soaker with my brother this time because it didn't have the credit. So we got Jay the credit. And we rode Roller Soaker. That's the only time I had really gone back there. And this uses the old Roller Soaker station. It uses the Roller Soaker station. So it was really kind of strange to go back up there and have a different ride up there. That's not something that where it's literally the exact same station without any modifications. Iron Wolf was modified for Goliath. They made it longer. Yeah. But this is the exact same. So that was kind of interesting. But this got me to spend 2 hours in Hershey Park's water park, the boardwalk there. Incredibly busy on busy weekends in the summer. Incredibly busy. They definitely need more water rides and more water park rides there. And I wouldn't be opposed to having more of these. I wish Dorney Park would get one of these. I would definitely go into the water park there. Haven't been into the water park over there in ages, probably since I worked there and had to go eat lunch there. So I would go to water parks much, much more if more of them had these type of rides, because these things are great.
Well, and now we're going to move into the 6 new, all of them are roller coasters, the 6 new roller coasters that we felt were worthy of talking about here. So we ranked them both. We took a little average between the 2 of us. And so we came up with a ranked list of 6. And we are going to start at number 6 with HangTime out at Knott's Berry Farm. Now, I rode this one before you did. I think from the videos last year, I think I was optimistic about this one.
We were.
Maybe comparing it. I think after riding it, I think we were comparing it a little bit too much to Monster. We right in the POV videos though, we identified where this was going to be different than Monster. And I thought it was a good ride. I thought it wasn't outstanding though. Like I find Monster to be an outstanding roller coaster from start to finish.
I agree.
And I'll say a few things of why I think that. I think first, having the higher capacity trains hurts this ride because they made it into a dive coaster, and I use the air quotation marks with that, obviously, because it does hold you on the holding brake, but I think that the drop afterwards is kind of ruined by the long slide down the holding brake. It doesn't have a very good first drop. I think the rest of the ride is pretty solid.
And because, Monster is very big, and because this is at that angle when they're holding you, the drop itself isn't that large. The drop itself is much smaller than the ride itself appears to be, because it's got that weird angle at the top. So the drop maybe comes in a little bit under what you might expect.
And I didn't get to see the lighting package. I didn't ride it with the lighting package. That obviously adds to the experience.
Now, that was very cool because we did. We didn't, when you and I went to Adventureland together, we did not get to see this lighting package on Monster.
Yeah.
And it changes different colors, but like on the ride we had, the whole ride was lit up dark blue. And then as the train goes through, the LED just in front of the train turns it green, or the whole thing will light up like a lighter blue, and then it'll change to blue, darker blue as the train goes over it. And it does it just in front of the train, so if you're in the front row, you actually see the track changing color as you go over it, which was very, very cool, and very cool to see as a bystander as well. So we rode this ride quite a number of times. We rode it many times during the day, and then I think we did it once or twice at night as well. I was real happy with this ride. I mean, it's about what I thought it would be.
It's a good ride. It's not a world beater.
No.
It's not, I probably still think Accelerator's better. I probably, Ghost Rider's obviously better at the park. But in that, so once you name those two, is it better than Silver Bullet? I don't know. Is it better than Montezuma? I don't know. But it's right within those same coasters there. A fine ride for what they paid for it, I would assume. So, and it has that beautiful lighting package that lights up that whole boardwalk area that really changes the look of it. And it's definitely an upgrade from a Boomerang. Like, let's be honest here, right?
Well, yeah, and that's a really good way to look at it. It's a huge improvement. I have no issues with HangTime.
So the next one on our list at number 5, coming in right below number 4, is Wonder Woman. And that's one that I did not ride that you did.
Yep.
I don't know, obviously the next one right above it, coming in at number 4, is Railblazer. So both of these rides are back to back here, and I think they came in properly, where most people have said that Railblazer is a little bit better than Wonder Woman because of the extra theming. You said it was a little bit smoother.
I thought so, and I've heard several other people who rode both say that they thought Railblazer was a tad bit smoother.
And I think in general, the single rails, I think they're fun rides. I think it's a fun addition to a park. I heard some people ranking it highly, and I'm just like, I don't go as far as to rank it. It's probably in my 50s somewhere in that range. It's a good ride. It's a solid ride. I would like to see other smaller parks get these. I don't think the bigger parks should get them. So when you start talking about like a Great Adventure or a Great America or a Kings Island.
No, those aren't the types of parks that this ride is meant to go in.
No, I think both of these rides are for smaller parks. Obviously, the capacity is an issue, and we heard stories of that this year that we were very critical of the capacity. And I don't know if it ever turned into the apocalypse that we said it was going to be. But I didn't hear a lot of whole happy people coming out of those lines either, saying that, the lines at Fiesta were significantly long all year long. They had issues with, did they have a single rider line versus not having a single rider line?
Well, and both rides I heard complaints about that, where it seemed to change from day to day whether or not, because on Railblazer the day we were there, they were if you were a single rider and went up the fast lane, they would let you stand there and just kind of wait off to the side until they needed a single. And then at Wonder Woman, they were doing the same sort of through Flash Pass, but we heard Wonder Woman, they took it away fairly early on.
Yeah.
They actually took it away, but at Great America, there were people who before us said no, they weren't doing single riders, and then people who went after us said no, they weren't doing single rider. But then at other various points during the year, they were. So it kind of seems like, depending on who was there that day operating the ride, whether or not they would actually let you do the single rider or not, which is interesting. But, I enjoyed both of these. In terms of where they rank amongst their parks, I think Railblazer's probably the best steel coaster at that park.
It's not a hard. Well,
I mean, Flight Deck's good. But
I like Flight Deck better still, and that was the first time I had ever ridden Flight Deck.
Flight Deck's a real solid ride, and I think that one's pretty close. I could go either way on that one. I'd have to look at my rankings actually to tell you for sure where I have them. But I think it's pretty close. Now I'm curious. So
I have Flight Deck in my mid 30s, and I know I have Railblazer towards the end. Towards my 40s, 50s. And I think Flight Deck's the superior ride there. And Railblazer, I think, is a nice ride that fits into that park. I even think Wonder Woman, to some extent, fits into Fiesta Texas nicely, too.
I think they did a nice job.
Like they've always gotten this, like, you have Iron Rattler there, but they were the first one to get the free fly, and now Railblazer, or Wonder Woman. I think it's a nice little ride that you can add into these, mid-size, smaller parks.
Yeah.
I think it'll be interesting to see what happens to the T-Rex rides, and who gets the first one of those, because I think those are the ones that you probably want to start targeting for
the bigger parks. Yeah, I mean, I would I do have Railblazer ranked just a few spots ahead of Flight Deck. Wonder Woman, I would say, is the third best coaster at that park. I think Iron Rattler, and I still think Superman is. I would ride Superman before I ride Wonder Woman. But look, that's not bad. I'm not saying that as if it's a bad thing. I think it's better than the Batman clone. I think it's better than the Spaghetti Bowl. The Mine Train is nothing to sneeze at Fiesta Texas. Wonder Woman's definitely better than all of those. So Fiesta Texas has a real nice collection of coasters that they've been building here slowly. They don't have the wood coaster right now. Maybe that'll come down the road. There's certainly still room for it there. But the single rails are exactly what we here on this show said that they probably would be. And I think that's okay. That's not bad. That's not a bad thing. That's a good thing.
Yeah.
We said that, it was myself, Aunt Sue, and Adam the Beard Man. In both cases, we actually were together at those parks. And, we were kind of saying, these rides are exactly what I thought they would be, and that's a good thing.
Yeah, no, I agree. The next one we have is the one I rode that you didn't get to ride that I really liked, and that was Twisted.
Cyclone. Twisted Cyclone. Come on, get your Twisteds and Wickeds in order here.
Wicked Cyclone, no. Twisted Colossus, no. Twisted Cyclone, yes. That's
Twisted Timber. Wait, that one's coming up.
That one's coming up later. I really like Twisted Cyclone. I thought I rode Steel Vengeance first before I rode Twisted Cyclone because it opened up later, and I really thought Twisted Cyclone had a few nice spots on it. That everyone criticized the length of this ride from right off the bat with the POVs. Everyone's like, it's too short, it's too short, it's too short. And I said during that media day that it was short, but it felt like a complete ride to me. Like it felt like it did a whole lot of stuff within that minute or so that you're on the track.
And I said that same sort of thing about Outlaw Run, having ridden it again this year. So I can understand that feedback.
And I'll tell you what, that wave turn that they have on Twisted Cyclone is I really love that wave turn.
That's what I've heard.
And then the second half of it is very reminiscent of Steel Vengeance, where you're doing flips inside the structure. So yeah, it's short, but I think it packs a powerful punch. I really like it. And I think that it has a lot of good elements. And I'll tell you what else it does. It doesn't slow down at any point during the ride. That you are going full speed from the moment you leave that lift hill to when you hit that brake run. There is no slowdown whatsoever. And that's what I like in a ride. You could have added a few more elements. You really could have at the end. But then you run into, turning into Wicked Cyclone. And my feelings on that ride, where I don't like rides that die at the end. And that's been my criticism of some of the RMCs, Wicked Cyclone, New Texas Giant. I don't like those rides because they die at the end. And in Twisted Cyclone, that's not an issue whatsoever. And I appreciate that. I'd rather have 4 less elements on a ride than sit there and go through those elements at a much lower velocity and speed. That's my opinion.
And I can understand that opinion. And Twisted Cyclone is one that I was looking at getting down to. The price to get down there just for a weekend was not quite right at the times that I was available and was looking to go down there. Small chance maybe I go down during a holiday in the park. It is supposed to be open during holiday in the park. Most of the park is. So I don't feel like that would be a wasted trip. I think like Superman and Metropolis, oddly enough, isn't open. Like that section of the park isn't open.
It's all based on sections and stuff.
Yeah. So, but like Goliath, Mindbender, Twisted Cyclone, I think Georgia Scorcher, those are all open to my knowledge. So I mean, it would be worth a trip and maybe keep the crowds down, and there would be less to do. So maybe more time to ride Twisted Cyclone and wait in line for it. So small possibility. Not enough to the point where we were going to wait 2 more months to do this show. But we'll see. But it makes me cautiously optimistic for Twisted Cyclone, because I have heard some good reviews for it. So that again, that's a good thing.
So then coming in next was actually a dead tie between the two of us.
Because you had them ranked 2-3, and I had them ranked 3-2.
Yeah. So, and that is Twisted Timbers and Time Traveler, both TTs.
Yes.
I slightly give the edge to Time Traveler over Twisted Timbers, and you slightly give the edge to Twisted Timbers over Time Traveler.
Yes.
So that's why they're tied here in the second position. So which one do you want to talk about first?
Well, let's. We just talked about Twisted Cyclone, so let's talk about Twisted Timbers and maybe make some comparisons between the two, because I rode Twisted Timbers early on in April and then again in August. You rode it just a few weeks ago, so it's fresh in your mind.
Yeah, and Twisted Timbers is one that going into last year, watching the POVs, we did a lot of timing of the test runs versus the POVs, trying to figure out if it was going to have that same speed, because this one was the closest one that we kind of compared to Wicked Cyclone, and wondering if it was going to hold its speed to the end, because, RMC likes to do the CGI stuff and sometimes speed stuff up here and there. So, having ridden it, and I rode it in pretty cold conditions, which you also did back in April.
The day in April, it was very warm. It was in the 80s.
Really?
It was like the first warm day they had. It was in the 80s, because we were joking around. It's like, well, it doesn't work in cold weather. It doesn't work in warm weather either.
That's right. I remember that. Oh,
so what are we left with here?
This is a ride that had a lot of issues to start with at the beginning of the season.
Yes, it did, and it was running very reliably by the end of the year.
Like the big circular saws, them, sawing into the steel track.
It valleyed on like its second weekend.
Like this one had a whole lot of issues. But I'll say this: Twisted Timbers, I was very worried about riding this ride walking into it. And I'll tell you this: that thing, those hills are really nice. It kept
Those 3 hills are awesome, aren't they?
And it kept its speed throughout the whole ride. It slowed down ever so slightly at the end, but I'll tell you what, it did not detract from the overall experience that I had on it. It has a lot of Steel Vengeance. It's funny because the RMCs this year all have a lot of Steel Vengeance in it. Steel Vengeance is the complete package, whereas Twisted Cyclone does the stuff inside the structure. Twisted Timbers does some of the flips and some of the hills like Steel Vengeance does. So it's kind of funny that you see variations on the same total package in Steel Vengeance. But Twisted Timbers I was very happy with at the end of the day. The only thing I wasn't happy with was the price of said t-shirts, one that you're wearing right there.
Yeah, how about it? Quite expensive.
Man. Oh man, you could go broke by it.
I had to take out a second mortgage on my house to pay for this shirt.
Seriously, right? You can see up here I did get the nice little apple up there. So that.
Now, did you get the big apple or the small apple?
Could not afford the big apple, so I had to go with the small apple.
You got the applet.
Yeah, seriously. But,
so what did you think about the first drop? Because Storm Chaser's first drop, we've always said, was good, but maybe not quite what it was hyped up to be. And we had heard that they reshaped the drop ever so slightly on Twisted Timbers to maybe give it a little bit more pop. And I, having ridden Storm Chaser back in June and then Twisted Timbers before and after it, I can definitely say that I felt a big difference, and I think Twisted Timbers drop is far superior.
Oh, yeah, for sure. I like Twisted Timbers drop. I like Twisted Timbers in the back.
Yep.
I think as well. You get so much more power, especially going through that first drop in the back rows. Just the hills from that point, you get that first drop, then you got those big airtime hills that you get a lot of air on. I tell you what, I had don't tell anyone I had my phone in my pocket.
Oh no.
But they weren't. So that's the other weird story because
the cops just pulled up to my house.
Someone got hit on Twisted Timbers with the phone early on the season. This is what sparked the whole no cell phone policy here and at Steel Vengeance.
Yeah.
But when I was there for Haunt, no one seemed to really care about the phones anymore. Which was strange because I heard people saying that even like a few weeks prior to that, they were still being real rigorous and real, watching the cell phones. People were on their cell phones in line. Nobody was saying anything to them. So I don't quite know where that stands. So I had it zipped up in a zipper pocket, and I'll tell you what, that thing was flying all over, within my shirt and stuff. And that's how much power it has. It has a whole lot of airtime on it. It has those flips, kind of like Steel Vengeance, like where, you don't know which way you're going. You're expecting to go one way, you go the opposite way. I'll tell you what, I really like Twisted Timbers a whole lot, and that's why I put it in my
I really think that Twisted Timbers is the most ride they could have possibly gotten out of that space and what they had to work with.
Absolutely. When you think about how bad Hurler was and how good this is, the upswing on that one, you talk about Boomerang to HangTime, Hurler to this is out of this world amazing.
Yeah.
That's millions of dollars very well spent there.
Yeah, absolutely, for sure. So, shall we talk about Time Traveler now?
Yeah, Time Traveler. I had Time Traveler slightly above Twisted Timbers, mainly because it's so unique, and maybe the ride itself maybe doesn't pack the punch that you would hope it would. But I'll tell you what does, and that's the spinning aspect of it. Really, really makes it that much better. And I heard one person put it it may not be the fastest, it may not be the most intense, but you're having one hell of a time every single ride, every single trip down through that.
Yeah.
And I'll tell you what else. Back row coming out that station, on that first drop is just out of this world amazing. If you're backwards or to the side, it's crazy. That is just a crazy experience. It actually made me want to ride DC Rivals even more.
Well, yeah, and I'll tell you what, because we were there for the Coaster Radio meetup there at the end of July, and that was during their like midnight, their summer nights or whatever. So we rode Time Traveler. It was like right after midnight, and I was in the back row for that midnight ride on Time Traveler, and oh my God, that was just an awesome experience. And you know, the way I put it when they did the live podcast recording during the show was, I've been on, you know, how many roller coasters, almost 700 roller coasters, and that's the first time I had ever entered a vertical loop sideways, been backwards at the top of it, and then been forwards at the bottom of it, and then went over an airtime hill where I was facing sideways over the airtime hill and didn't see the airtime hill coming. You know, going through a corkscrew while I was backwards at the beginning and then sideways at the end, and somehow was facing forwards, or what I thought was forwards in the top of it because I was upside down and sideways. It was just a completely new and different experience. And you know, for people like us who travel to all these parks and ride all these rides, to give us something completely new and completely different is very, very difficult to do. And I mean, we've been on spinning rides, we've been on launch rides, but to put it all together in this sort of fashion is something, it's not, the phrase I used was, it's not quite like anything I've ever ridden before.
And not only that, but it's the whole package at Silver Dollar City too, with that ride, with the theming throughout the whole thing, with, you know, when I stood in the station a few times for rain delays, for, you know, slight lines, and just the music inside the station is all, it's like banjo country music, but it's all based on other popular songs that have to do with time. And little nuances like that, I think really enhance the overall experience of rides for me. Now, granted, you know, maybe giving it that slight little edge, I'm not going to rank it, you know, 15 spots over because it's got a nice theme to it. But
right.
But in general, it does give it the edge a little bit, and the ride sign out front and the theme of it, you know, the whole storyline that they created with the Dream Big, Do Good stuff. It's just a total package out there, and there's a whole lot I loved about Time Traveler. I really didn't think I was gonna like it. I thought it was gonna be a solid ride. I didn't walk into it thinking I was gonna like it as much as I did, and I ended up really, really loving that ride. And
yeah, and I'll tell you what, in a lot of, I think both, if Twisted Timbers and Time Traveler were both built in 2017, I would probably say that either of those rides probably could have won Best New Ride. Mystic Timbers is a good ride.
Absolutely.
But I think either of those rides could have been Best New Ride in 2017, for sure. And it's a real shame for both of those rides, what the obvious number one is here.
That they ran into the buzzsaw.
Yeah, because, and here's the thing, you know, people might remember that when we did this show where we were ranking what we were most anticipated for back in January, you had Steel Vengeance at number one. I had Twisted Timbers at number one, mainly because you and I had expressed concerns about the speed of Steel Vengeance because it was such a long ride, and we had not yet seen an RMC that maintained its speed through a very long course very well. And when we saw the reverse POV of Jason McClure and Tony Clark riding in March, that's when you and I kind of said, you know what, they might really have something here. And that's when you and I actually started getting very, very, people might remember that we were not completely enthused about either of those two rides, and we said it was possible Twisted Cyclone might be the best of the three because it doesn't have the chance to lose the speed. Well, we're happy to say that neither Steel Vengeance nor Twisted Timbers have that problem, and that's why they're the top two for me. And we always said that if Steel Vengeance could hold its speed, it would probably be the best steel coaster in the world. Most people were just saying that it was, but we needed to put that qualifier on it. And the good news is it does keep its speed, and it is one of the best steel coasters in the world, and that's why it's number one on both of our lists. We've talked about Steel Vengeance so much here. I don't know if we need to talk about it a ton here, but I mean, you look at the top three here: Time Traveler, Twisted Cyclone, or Twisted Timbers, you know, whatever order, and then Steel Vengeance. I mean, even Twisted Cyclone to be number 4 on a list like this, that tells you how good a lot of these rides were.
It's a really good class of 2018, that's for sure. And just to put the emphasis on Steel Vengeance, where I got to ride it, a lot more over the summer, for Halloween as well. And here's the beautiful part of Steel Vengeance. It gets better every time you ride it. It really does.
And I think our friend Paul Drayback once said years ago on Coaster Radio, when they went to the opening of the voyage, like a month after the voyage opened, he said, the voyage, even when it's running a little bit slower, it still rocks.
Yeah.
And Steel Vengeance is the same way. Even if you catch it on a day where maybe it's not running its best, maybe it's a cold day, maybe the mid course is hitting really hard, it still rocks. It's still great. And if you catch it on its best day, look out.
I'll tell you what, and we caught it on its best day, on opening day, on media day.
And it's never going to be any better than it was at 4 a.m. on media day. Sorry, folks, but I don't know that anything's ever going to top those first few rides that we had before. I'm not going to say when the sun came up because it was so foggy, but having a night ride in that cool, misty Lake Erie air, going through it was so foggy that the orange lights that were pointing up at the structure, it was like going through orange fog. You couldn't see where you were going. You couldn't see what was around the next corner. And, we've talked about this before. If you're on Patreon, you've heard the on-ride audio of that very first ride that we had. There's a couple of rides. There's a couple of individual rides that I can point out we can point out of our coaster riding careers. I think my 2 night rides on Nemesis at Alton Towers are certainly up there. Our Zen ride on the Voyage a couple years ago that we did in memory of our friend Elaine is certainly up there. That first ride on Steel Vengeance is up there in that class, and it always will be.
And I'll tell you what, I got the experience to ride Steel Vengeance for the first time with other people for their first time.
Yes.
And I'll tell you what,
that's fun.
That's a treat too. Like my brother and his wife, like they go to Cedar Point. They're not huge coaster people, and they're just like, this ride blows me away. My dad, who his favorite roller coaster is Blue Streak, so there's a little bit of a move up towards Steel Vengeance. Even he's like we hit that brake run, and he's like, I don't know what just happened for the last, 3
And that was the mid-course brake run.
That was the mid-course. It's like the Steel Vengeance, I think the beautiful part of it does things that no other roller coaster does. I find it difficult to believe that any other roller coaster will ever replicate the things. Like, you'll have stuff like Twisted Timbers and, Twisted Cyclone, try and replicate pieces, but you're never going to have that full package that Steel Vengeance does. And there's no other rides out there that come close to doing this kind of stuff.
And to be honest, we always said that, if they did the Texas Giant thing but learned from their mistakes on Mean Streak, it would be game over. And
it is.
There's not really any other. I mean, they're doing the White Cyclone one over there in Japan right now, but I mean, neither you or I are going to ride that anytime soon. But there's not any big wood coasters to do that kind of thing to anymore. The opportunity to do anything like Steel Vengeance is just not there anymore. Now, we've been talking about RMC Mean Streak for probably the better part of 5 years now, and it was worth every second of the wait.
And Tony Clark said on one of his recent blog posts that he's never been a part of a ride where so many people walk off saying, that's the best thing I've ever done.
And not just coaster people.
Yeah.
Even the general public gets the sense that there's something special about this one.
And there totally is. Even with the problems that it had, they still plugged away an awesome crew, still running with 1 train sometimes, 2 trains sometimes. And then by the end of the year, they got that 3rd train back on. But I'll tell you what, that ride is something special. And oh man, like you said, that first ride that we had, that's going to rank up there. That there's only a couple of rides in my mind. There's a Magnum ride where I, went up into the fog and then came down. There's my, infamous Maverick ride from Hollow Weekends one year.
Yeah.
And I'll tell you what, there's also the Mean Streak ride that I had without the brakes on it. That was pretty special.
Yeah.
But that Steel Vengeance ride, man, I'll tell you what, we could not have had a very first ride, very first train out, back row, very last seat. And that onboard audio will tell you all you ever need.
And I went back in August when the park was actually open and finally got to ride Maverick and Steel Vengeance one right after another.
Yeah.
I had a hard time picking too. I'll tell you what, you might have the two best steel coasters in the world just a few yards apart from each other back there. I'll tell you what.
And I got to ride Steel Vengeance front row, finally, because we didn't get to ride it Media Day because they had all the camera stuff, set up. But Steel Vengeance at night front row, that was something special too. That was, man, that's a ride. I tell you what, that ride, I don't know. That's why I rank it higher than Raptor. I do. I rank it higher than Voyage. I do. Because I think Steel Vengeance is that special of a ride where you have every other coaster. And there's a far distance between Steel Vengeance and everything else. And that's why we sit here. It's number one. It's number one, of every year in my book. So.
Well, and it's, the same way that we talk about Voyage and how it's like Voyage, and then you get to number two, it's the same thing. It's like Steel Vengeance, and then you get to number two. There's people who still say they like Maverick better. I don't have a problem with that, completely honest with you. But for me, it's Steel Vengeance, Maverick, Fury, that grouping right there. Take your pick from there. But I mean, Steel Vengeance, that's I
personally think, and you're going to disagree with this, but I personally think Steel Vengeance is leaps and bounds better than Voyage as well. That it is by far the best roller coaster.
Well, and I'm the wood coaster guy. You are not. So I think we can agree to disagree on that one because I'm the wood coaster guy and you are not. But we can agree. I mean, you said when we came into the break round on that first ride, you said, "Is that Steel Voyage?" And we talked about it, and it's like, you know what? People always talk about, well, wouldn't it be amazing if they RMC'd the Voyage? And it's like, well, they did. It's called Steel Vengeance. So leave the Voyage the hell alone. Yeah. We're going to leave the Voyage the way it is because that's the best wood coaster ever built, and we're going to have Steel Vengeance the way it is because that's probably the best steel coaster ever.
Yeah, it's
now you got both.
So I'll tell you what, I was more than happy with the 2018 class of roller coasters. We like you said, we had a lot of question marks walking into 2018. There are a lot of question marks to be had all around from top to bottom. And I'll say I am overly surprised that all of them ended up delivering for the most part. That all those questions were put to rest between Time Traveler, Twisted Timbers, Twisted Cyclone, Steel Vengeance. All those concerns were put to rest, and we have really outstanding roller coasters for 2018. So that's really exciting.
Yeah, and we have not been able to say that many years, but this year I think it's true.
Yeah, absolutely. So before we go, don't forget we do have the lovely poll that is now open. The Ride Warrior Choice Awards is now open. We also talked a lot about Patreon. You're going to see at the end of the show here, we're going to recognize those Patreon members who have donated to us, over the months, on the end of the show as sponsors, if you will. So if you want to join Patreon, we got some wonderful extra shows up there that you can access. Also that onboard audio, if you want to hear that stuff. Oh, that's the stuff of legend there. That is also on there. So we would, of course, appreciate any money that you could give to us to help support the site and the overall endeavors that we do. It does cost a few bucks to run the site. So that, of course, does go and help out. And you do get some cool stuff, too, depending on what tier you enter into on Patreon. So I guess, Danny, that wraps us up for this evening. I'm, of course, Andrew Barczyk from Chicago, Illinois.
And I'm Danny Miller from a snowy Binghamton, New York. At the beginning of
I got Holiday in Park coming up here at Six Flags, so I'm a little excited. So we will be back. We got a whole bunch of different shows planned out for you. So as always, ride on, Ride Warriors.
Thanks, guys. See you next time.